Right. Yeah. So yesterday we discussed about overview about Oracle Integration Cloud and some history of the technologies. What is the what is the purpose of integrations? What's the web service means? How it is going to help us in the integrations? And then we talked about the difference between Fusion applications and Oracle Apps technologies. Also, that we had seen in Hello World integration and also had shown one FBDI integration, which was already built. We executed that and seen how it was able to read the file from FTP and upload to Fusion. So that was just to get an understanding about the course. I'm going to, in fact, cover those topics again at the right time as part of our course. With that, what we'll do today, we are going to start with the basics of certain fundamentals of these technologies. One of them is understanding about XML, etc. So when we are using web services specifically, that too like SOAP-based web services, we're having two kind of web services, right? SOAP and REST. We'll be talking about the difference about that later. But in SOAP web services, what happens is the payload, what you're exchanging, the data between the client and server will be always XML. Okay. So I'm sure every one of us would have used XML in some manner, but we'll formally go and understand what is XML. And after that, we're going to understand about how to define a specific structure for an XML document so that we can refer them in the integrations. That is nothing but XML schema document XSD. We'll also see after that WSDL. What WSDL means, like what are the information available in that document, all that going forward. I think mostly today we'll be focusing around XSD, and in the next session we'll be talking about WSDL, right? So before that, first XML. So for XML, let me open an existing XML and show that. From there we can. Okay, so I'll go to our files. This all I'll be sharing. If you're not shared, this whole structure. So in this, let's take any example. For example, employee.xsd, employee.xml. Okay, take this XML. So this is XML is pretty obvious. I mean, pretty easy to understand here. Correct. What is there here? This is an XML which represents one record, one employee record. So here we are having one employee is a top element that is called root node here. And then we're having the sub elements like name, ID, experience, age, all that, correct? And then it also having starting name and ending. This is like to forward slash, this is like end of the tag. Then we're having the data in between, David, ID is 2, 3, 4, 5, experience is 12, like that. So if you open, I'm going to keep everybody unmute. So when, right. So when you have any XML, it's very easy to understand because of one reason. The XML contains your data and meaning of the data together, right? For example, instead of this document, I can also send the data like this, correct? Let's say I'm sending like this. But the problem with this also employee record. But here the employee record, if I pass to somebody, how they interpret this data is not very clear. It's not obvious here. Is this name? Maybe. Is this ID or is it like no, something else? How do we know that? So usually what happens if you're sending in any other text format, then you'll be sending another document which explains how to read that, how to understand or how to interpret the data, right? In order to avoid that confusion, so the XML is going to help us. In XML, you're always having the data and the meaning of the data together. That's why it becomes so popular. In fact, you take any software applications now, all kind of data, specifically like not in the database. It was not that common in the database side, but when it comes to like Java and web applications, everything is represented using XML. Your configuration files, your metadata files, and even if you take, for example, the latest the frameworks from Oracle like ADF and Oracle SOA, when you open the even the files, the application files, they will be all showing just XML, correct? Not even Java code, nothing. So they made it like that extensive. I mean, the industry has used this XML so extensively that everywhere we start using XML, The one reason is it's having like no a standard here to represent the data. The data and the name are always together. And another advantage with XML is since it's having some specific standard like this, there are so many tools already evolved. So those tools will be able to help us to parse the data. For example, I have XML, I want to convert this to Java object. You have APIs for that. You want to convert from like this to something else, maybe JSON. Like there may be APIs available like that, right? So that is the reason XML is very commonly used in the IT applications, right? So now, on the same lines, even the web services, the SOAP-based web service specifically, always they exchange the data using XML. So client and server, they have to send in XML format only. There is no other format is allowed or understood by SOAP web services. Okay. Now, when you are developing web services, what happens is the web service will be having a name, correct? And then it will be having an operation, and the operation will be containing input and output. It's like any other operations. One thing what you need to the way you have to understand these technologies when we are learning the technologies. In fact, you try to relate with what you know. When I say what you know PLSQL programming, for example, or you may be knowing some Java programming. So there also we were developing these things in a different manner. Or you developed in one manner. Now we are going to develop the same things in a different manner. In PLSQL also, when you're developing a package, when you're developing like a function and procedure, they're also having like a function name, input and output for that. And in case of PLSQL, what we do, we use the PLSQL types. We are saying number or varchar2, etc. It comes to Java. Java is having their own data types. But ultimately, what you're representing is like whether it's a varchar or is it going to be number or is it going to be some object. When it's an object, it's a structure. It's a group of attributes together, correct? So in the web service also, ultimately what we're doing, we're exposing a functionality, right? Only thing is that will be available as a URL. Yesterday I was mentioning that. So the moment it becomes URL, it becomes independent of technology, right? So, but there also you have to mention somewhere that operation, what is the input for that operation, what is the output for that operation, so that when the client is going to invoke that, client will be able to send the data in that specific type or in the specific structure. Okay. Now, the thing here, since we are saying everything has to be XML, right? Web service operation, it can only accept XML. It can only return XML. So it means you have to mention here, if I'm receiving, for example, employee ID, my web service, I cannot say employee ID like number like that. I have to mention that this is going to accept an XML document which may contain like this, right? So the input will be coming like this. Now, how do you say that my data type will be like this? The same thing output may be something like this. I'm going to send employee details as the output. So you have to somewhere mention that my web service operation will be taking an input of this kind and the output of this structure. So when you say this one, this is not actually a type. This is actually one record. It's like you're saying, when you say int a or 10, there's a difference, right? Int a is a type here, integer. 10 is actual value. This is like actual value. Employee, when you're saying all this is actual value, it's a one record. So in the specifications, when you're developing the specs of anything like your PLSQL or Java anywhere, you don't mention the actual data, right? The actual data will be coming during the request. So you have to mention a type for that one. So in case of other programming languages, we're having data types. But when you're dealing with XML, there is a way to specify the type or the structure of the XML, that is XSD. XML schema definition. Hope that is clear, right? So you want to mention in the wherever you want to say web service operations, etc. You want to mention what is the input type, output type. For that, you need to mention an XML structure. To represent a specific XML structure, you are going to create XML schema document. Okay, XML, XSD XML schema definition. So that is XSD document. So Any quick questions on XML? I mean, it's nothing to explain here. Actually, it's pretty straightforward.
XML is clear, Bhaskar. What is that you are telling, that input and output type, and we have to use XSD for using that one? Can you please clarify?
No, I'll be explaining that, but you understand about XML, right? XML is pretty straightforward. There's nothing to explain here. I can show one more XML. I'll be talking about XSD and how we use it. And let me show just one more. This one order, I think. XML. Yeah. Let's open this XML. So if you open this XML, this is a little bit more complex XML. What happens here? Here also, if you look at this one, you're having an order, my root element. Order contains order ID. Order ID here is 100. Customer contains ID and name. Then items contain item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4. There are 4 items. And every item contains ID, name, and price. Like this, your XML is extensible. You can create any XML to represent your record according to what is your record structure.
Okay, this is
right?
clear. Yeah.
But, so just first keep this if this is understood, then we'll be talking about XSD. Okay. So when it comes to XSD now, what we'll do is, this is my XML. If you want to understand how you represent this one using an XSD is going to be a generic way of representing this structure. Right? It may be David, it may be something else tomorrow, the actual record. So let me open again a corresponding XSD and show you. Let me put this on this side. Yeah. Let's try to understand this document. Is this clear? Is it visible? Do you want me to make it a little bigger? It's okay, right? Okay. If not visible, just let me know. So here, one second, please. Somebody joining. May I know who is Kumar? Sorry. Did you join today for the first time? You have to unmute.
Yes, I joined for the first time.
Okay. Did you come to Madhu or?
No, I just want to see how is this demo.
Okay. If you don't mind, could you share your contacts on my private chat on this? I will just send you a message.
Okay.
Your number and email.
Okay.
And one more person, is this Yusuf?
Yeah, Yusuf.
Yeah, hi Yusuf. Yeah, all right. Sorry, I'll just continue. So first 1 or 2 sessions we'll be having this kind of things. Otherwise, we'll be pretty much set. Yeah. So let's open this XSD and try to understand. And this is my XML. So here, what we're saying that my XML will be following this structure. What is this structure here? This is a grammar we are using, XSD grammar. We are saying that the root element of my XML will be employee. Then employee is not a simple type. Employee is going to be a complex type. A complex type with sequence of other elements. What are the other elements here? Element, name, this one. And the name is going to carry a data of string. Then one more element called ID, which is going to carry a data type of integer. So these are again primitive types available in XSD, like float, integer, all that. But when you want to represent an XML structure like this, you're going to make use of those primitive types and other terminology like element, name, type, with the help of that grammar, you are going to build one XML schema document. Okay. So this XSD now represents this structure. It means any XML which is going to follow this XSD will be having something like this. The values may change, but it will always follow this structure. You need to mention that, right? Otherwise, how will client know that, oh, let's say web service is just saying you will receive a type of employee. But what is employee? What are elements it will contain? For that one, we are specifying using this XSD. Okay, this is actually not complex again. We'll be talking a little more complex XSDs. So here what we are saying, element, employee. Here element, I don't have any complex type. In this case, I'm directly having a type attribute here. Wherever element which is going to carry the data directly, which is like a leaf node kind of thing. It is not a complex type. It is not having child elements. In that case, you are going to have a type and you are using primitive types directly. Wherever an element which will be containing, which will be like comprised of other sub elements, then you are going to have a complex type sequence of other elements. Okay, so that's how you are going to write XSD. Now, how we are going to write XSD, I'll be showing that. Are you going to write like line by line? Are there any tools to generate this one? That and all we'll be discussing. But just let me know in this part if anything is not clear. This part, I'll be talking about this part again.
How this data type are defined? For example, ID, there is a numeric. Here it is coming as integer. And salary, if you see, that is also numeric, but it is.
Yeah, salary may be containing, for example, like this also. That's why it's float.
No. Okay, but if it is there, if it is okay, this is another different example that you took. This is for different example.
No.
That is why it is coming.
Prakash, right?
Yeah, correct.
So Prakash, if you're writing a PLSQL program or Java program, you will say float A. Can I assign A equal to 10 also? I can do, right? I can also assign A equal to 10.5 also. Correct?
Yeah. So I mean,
it's like that.
Yeah, that is fine. So you're taking this float. You're taking this different example, not for this XML. Correct?
No. See, float means it can also take the without point also, right?
Okay. No. You are defining this XML or it is automatically defined, this XSD file?
No, this is an XSD which I am writing, which can represent any XML like this. Tomorrow it may be having another XML like this, right? This is experience has to be number only. I cannot take point. Age has to be number only. This may be saying 500.340. This could be John, right? Bonus again integer only. Actually, this can be float also. If you're defining float, your XML will allow float.
Okay. So we are defining this. Okay, XSD file.
Yeah, we are defining this, and then you are going to restrict your XML to follow this one.
Okay. So it is not automatically, the XSD file is not going to be generated automatically.
Of course, I mean we can generate using tools, but yes, this is basically you are defining to represent your XML documents. Okay. Right. So now, any other questions in this? Yeah, we will not spend too much time on these basics because I mean this is not really integrations. Okay, when you're talking XML, XSD, these are generic fundamentals we are understanding. So we'll try to go and cover so that we'll actually go to integrations and work on the integrations. Right. Okay. Now let me open another XML. Right, we already opened this one. Order XML. For this also we can develop or we can create an XSD. But that XSD will look a little more complex for sure, because it has to say that root element has to be order, which will comprise of 3 elements, order ID, customer items, like complex type sequence of 3 elements. Then order ID is going to be like type, maybe integer. Then customer is going to be again a complex type because it's having sub elements, correct? So it will be, if I have to write a XSD, it will be something like order ID. Then, sorry, it is going to be order. Then it is going to have a sequence of order ID. Then one more customer. Customer will be again sequence of like other elements, ID and name. Items. Item will be having like no 4 times item here. It means a repeating element of item, and item will be again having item ID, name and price. So you have to create XSD which is going to represent this kind of structure. What we will do now, we'll go and find, one second. Yeah, we'll go and find if there are any tools on the internet, so to generate these XSDs. So XML to XSD converter online. There are many tools available actually. You can just take any tool. I'm opening this one. Which is easy. Writing this one is easy. When I say this one, or writing this one is easy. Writing XML document is easy, correct? So whenever you have a requirement that I need to, like my web service or wherever you want to represent some XML, so you're not going to write XSD directly. You're going to always come up with a sample XML for that. Once you have a sample XML, using sample XML, you should be able to generate the XSD using these tools. So in this case also order, this is sample order. The values may change based on your actual order. This may be 4 times, this may be 5 times or 2 times also item. Customer may contain these 2 only, but the values can change, correct? So now what I do, I take this sample order, sample XML document, paste here. Then there is an option called generate schema. Usually XML schema, we're going to refer with the name schema. In case of web services, integrations, when you say schema, it is XML schema. Generate. Now come down and see it is generating one document here. Let us copy paste into our notepad and understand what it generated. So I'll open new file and save this. Order June 20.xst. Okay. So let us again, we'll talk about these upper elements later and try to understand if this is following the structure or not. We are doing the reverse engineering here. We have the XML, we are developing the XSD. Now what you will say, going forward, wherever you want to use this kind of XML, you will say, hey, that XML has to follow this XSD. Okay. So now let's understand this, what is generated. Root element is order, correct? So let's first minimize these first level sub elements. First level sub elements we can minimize here also. So order is a sequence of order ID. It is taking unsigned byte. Why? Because you kept 100. That tool understood that 100 means it's going to be a small number. So it taken like a smallest possible unsigned byte. You can change it to integer if you think like this number may be big also. Because you are creating a generic XSD, right? So you can change those types after you generate it. Then customer. Customer is again taking ID and name. Again, ID is saying unsigned short and name equal to, name is string type. But it's a complex type, you see that? Then items. Come to items. What is doing items? Items is also a complex type with sequence of element called item. Is item a root? Is item is a complex type? Yes, because it's having sub elements. So this item contains again a complex type of these elements: ID, name, and price. It also assigns some types based on the sample data. If you want to change, you can go and change them. Instead of short, you want to put integer, that's fine. You can change it. Price also, it is taking short. You can change it to float if you want. But the structure it has defined based on what you're saying. Now, one more thing here, item is repeated element, right? You also need to mention somewhere that it can be repeated. It is having only one instance of item here. But there is an attribute it has added, max occurrence equal to unbounded. Max occurrence equal to unbounded means this element may be repeated in the actual XML document any number of times. You can also mention max occurrence equal to 10. It means 10 times it may repeat, up to 10. Max occurrence equal to 0 or we can say min occurrence equal to 0. Min occurrence equal to 0 means it is not mandatory. Okay, min occurrence equal to 2 means at least 2 times it should be there. Like that, there are some attributes which are possible in XSD. So with the help of those attributes and with the help of these types and this complex type sequence, like using this one, you'll be able to define XSD for any kind of XML. So usually, as I said, we don't go and write like line by line of this XSD. Rather, we're going to generate with the help of these tools, or in most of the platforms, like when you're going for integration cloud, or specifically in the integration cloud, you can actually take a sample XML and your platform is going to generate the XSD most of the places. That option will be there. Either you will say, I have a XSD, use that one. Or you can say, I have a sample XML, based on that you generate the schema. That's also, it will generate. Okay. Right, so that's how you can generate the XSD for a given XML. So let's understand here. So if you have any questions in this one, I will clarify.
Bhaskar, left hand side is the XML data and XSD you are creating the right hand side. Let's say, for example, I have an Oracle database which stored 100 number employee table, and that table record, if I select star from employee, that all the data, let's say employee, department, salary, that also converted can be in the left hand side XML, correct? There is a way to convert that one, like select operation from the database table to XML.
Yes, yes. So yeah, it's definitely whatever the data you are any data you can represent using XML, right?
Right.
First, you have to create a sample XML representation for your data.
No, I'm talking about, I have my select statement like a select star from employee table, which employee table have a 5 element column, and that will be converted in the left hand side. Is it possible?
Yeah, but that is a different context you're talking.
Right. Because this can be a actual real scenario, like one of the system having an Oracle database of data, and that data can be consumed in the target database, target application, which require the input as a XML. That means my data which I am taking from the source is a Oracle database, which I am now putting that to the target system to do some operation, and that require XML file.
Yeah, see that and all, like later like we are going to of course discuss those kind of things. In fact, many such use cases. But here we are talking about without the context of like your source and target systems. First of all, anywhere you want to represent an XML structure, right? How you are going to mention that my XML has to follow so and so structure.
Yeah, that I understood. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, we'll be talking about that. Yes, what you told, all those things are possible using integrations. In fact, we'll be reading from database and we'll be updating using database through XML schema and all. Yes, it's possible. So when you say select star, in fact, using database adapter, we are going to do that one. So when you say database adapter, you will say, this is a query, I'm going to use it for like my specific use case. Then it's going to generate automatically XML schema document for you in the integration. That integration cloud platform will be able to generate XML schema for us automatically in those cases. Understood?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. In this context, is it clear for everyone how to represent XML in XSD? See, I'm not asking you to really again become super expert of XSD. That is not really goal of here. You are not going to write like XSDs. But if you have to open any XML schema document XSD and you have to read it, you should be able to read and understand. That is the whole purpose. Right? Okay. So now, if you understand this one, then I'm going to talk about the upper portion of your XSD. What are these things like? You're having target namespace, element from default, XMLNS, :EMP, XMLNS, X1, so and so many things are there. But first you have to understand these things.
Sorry to interrupt, Bhaskar. Actually, in case of CLOB type or any other type, what will be the type that will be taken here?
CLAB also will be, I think here it will be string only. Ultimately, it is going to be like a large amount of data.
Images, can we send some images blog type?
Image will become again a byte only, right?
Hmm.
When you are representing image, when you're transferring, it will be like a simple byte. Okay, those and all you can definitely try out. Let's say you can go and explore further on the XSD. Okay, usually there are different ways of representing. If you're, I mean, for example, the integrations also, right? Whether you're dealing with the files or dealing with like the normal data, then what kind of adapters will be using and all. It will be different ways in the integrations. But here we're just talking about plain XML representation of your data. All right. So with that, what we'll do, let me go here. You have to be really, you have to pay attention, and it's a little bit confusing things here. So you have to be, you have to pay attention and understand what I'm talking. So here, there is a few things here. First thing you're having XML-NS. XML-NS means XML namespace. Okay. XML-NS is nothing but XML namespace. What is namespace? Namespace is like a package. In case of PLSQL, you're having a package, right? Inside the package, you can have multiple operations like functions and procedures. So there can be two different packages. In both the packages, you can have functions and procedures with the same name, right? But whereas it comes to XML, we call namespaces. Namespace also, the purpose is same. What I'm saying is, I'm having a namespace, and in the namespace, I can have multiple XSDs. Okay, so now here, XML-NS :XSD. What does it mean? It means this XSD is actually referring an existing namespace. Namespace is nothing but usually it is representing one XML, another XSD. Namespace is usually representing another XSD. So this XSD is going to refer this XSD namespace, and what are the elements coming from that XSD? I'll be using a prefix XSD in my document. Any elements which are coming from this XSD will be referred in this document using a prefix XSD. So if you see here, element, type, complex type, all these things are prefixed using XSD. What is that? If I simply write element, it doesn't understand what is element. Employee understood because you are giving a name to that one. But the type, simply write string, it will not understand what is string. This string has to be defined somewhere in the libraries. That library is also having another XSD document defined already. That document is also having a namespace defined. The namespace is like this. So you are going to refer the XSDs using namespaces. You are going to refer the XSDs in the other documents using namespaces. So this is a namespace defined already. This is a standard namespace. We are not writing that one. It is not user defined namespace. Like www.w3org 2001 XML schema. You open any XML schema document, XSD document, you will always have this value same. XML-NS :XSD. Then only it will understand what is the meaning of these things. Now, in addition to that one, you're also having another field here, target namespace. Target namespace means for this XSD, what we are writing, I am assigning a namespace. If you are referring existing namespace, you are going to use XML-NS, then colon some value, and that value you are going to refer in the documents for referring those elements coming from that source. But now you are writing XSD because some XML will refer this, right? Some XML will refer this, or another XSD also can refer this if they want to extend. In those cases, how are they going to refer that? They are going to refer using this namespace. They're going to refer using this namespace. That namespace you are assigning here to your XSD. Right? That is mandatory. Every XML schema document will be having a target namespace so that whoever is going to refer XSD, they will be able to refer the elements of your XSD using this namespace. Those two things are clear. One is your standard namespace I'm referring. One is I'm assigning the target namespace to my own document. Now, let me open another XSD. Purchase order XSD. This is also another type of order. In this case, what they did, element name equal to purchase order, type PO colon purchase order type. If you look at this one, you don't have XSD colon, right? You see the difference? In this case, I'm using XSD colon, but here there is no XSD colon. How do you think it is working here? I mean, this is not a wrong XSD. This is also correct XSD only. But can you tell me why this is correct? I said it has to be prefixed. Are you able to make out anything here?
Because I think there is no namespace. No, the standard namespace is not having the XSD, I believe. Is it right?
Sorry, can you say that again?
There is the standard namespace is not having that XSD, I think. That is
Exactly.
why.
So you are mentioned here, there is no prefix. XML NS, I want to refer these things without any prefix. That is the reason you are using without prefix. But you can have only one such XML NS definition here. You can have multiple XML NS references in your XSD because your XSD may be referring namespaces or elements from different other XSDs. Okay, it's possible. So one of them can be without prefix. So in this case, whoever written this XSD, they decided that anything coming from my standard XSD, I will referring without any prefix. And that's what I defined here also. But it's also having a target namespace. Target namespace is HTTP XML NS Oracle COM NS order. Now, do you see anything here? One more XML NS is there, PO, colon PO, and this value is exactly same as the target namespace, correct? Why is that required? And if you look at the document, the PO is referred at one place here. So let us try to understand this document actually, how it is written. It's telling element name equal to purchase order. It means my root element will be purchase order. The purchase order actually is ending here only. If you are putting forward slash, it's nothing but it's end of this element. That's how any XML can be written. If you are not having any sub elements, you can end like this directly. You can either put like this, or you can also, if you don't have any value here, like you can also end like this. Now, you're telling the type for this element is PO colon purchase order type. What is purchase order type? This is not a element coming from the standard schema. It is also clear here. It's having a prefix here. If you're taking from this one, you are going to have a prefix. If you're not, in this case, you should not be having prefix, correct? But you're telling PO colon. It means this has to come from this namespace. Am I correct? You're saying PO colon means it has to come from this namespace. What is this namespace? Where is it available? This is available in the same document. This namespace is actually coming from the same document, right? That means this element is defined in the same document somewhere. You can see that actually it is defined here. The purchase order type is actually defined here only. Complex type, name equal to purchase order type. Then they define the sequence of other elements. So that different ways of writing your XSD. I could have written this whole thing without this option also. Like what we did in case of order. We're directly saying whenever there is a complex element, I'm saying complex type. I'm not ending that here. I'm writing the complex type and sequence elements. But here what they did, I'm ending that. I'm creating a separate type for that complex element. and referring that as a type for my actual element. You can do that. Many places we do in the programming also. You create one type, then you are going to create other variables of that type. When will you do that? If you think that there can be more variables of that type in your program, then you are going to create type for that one, and then you are going to refer that. The good example could be you are creating an XSD for customer and for employee, for example. The same XSD can contain customer element, also employee element. Two separate root elements are possible. Just make a note of this one. One XML schema document can contain multiple elements, multiple root elements. Okay, customer, for example, employee, two elements are there. Now, customer contains customer ID, customer name, etc. It will also contain address, for example. Employee also contains employee name, etc. So it will also contain address. Address is a complex type. Address may contain address like your door number and street, city, like etc. etc. Now, when you're defining the customer element and when you're defining employee element, instead of repeating the address structure, what you can do, you can create the address structure like this one place and refer that address type in both the elements for address. Making sense? In those cases, what you do, you're going to have a XML NS with some prefix where the value will be same as of its own target namespace. And then you're going to refer those internal types with the help of that prefix. Okay? That's where you will be seeing in some documents where the XML NS is having one of the XML NS definitions will be having same value as the target namespace of its own document. If you go back to EMP XSD also, we're having that. XML NS, we're having one XML NS, you can see like this. Same, but this employee, are we referring anywhere? No. Why you are having, even if I'm not referring, that's fine. You just refer, you just keep it. If you want to refer, you can refer later. Otherwise, it's fine. So this is the mandatory thing is this one will be having the same value. Target namespace, you are assigning some value. If you're going to refer anything with the same document, you will be generally keeping another XML NS with some prefix value with the same value target namespace. Now the next question is, what should be the value for target namespace? Can I assign anything? Or it has to be always URL. If you open any XML schema, usually the target namespace value will be URL. But it's not mandatory to have the URL here. I can also put ABC, it will still work. Only thing is, whoever is going to refer your XSD, they have to refer as a ABC only. Why you don't want to put ABC? If you put ABC, that may clash with other namespaces. Some other person also may be saying ABC only. Now ABC employee, and you're also having ABC employee. That employee structure is different, your employee structure is different. See, another advantage you're getting with namespace is you're able to define or segregate your own definitions. My employee definition is like this. Your employee definition may be something different also. Like for example, I will show one more employee definition. This is also an XSD. In this case, employee details is having employee ID, first name, last name, email, phone number different. DCXT is having different. But when you cannot control, if you're developing integrations, you may be taking the values from different services coming from different sources. One service is telling my employee definition is like this. Another service is telling my employee definition like this. Now, how will you make sure that there is no clash or there is no conflict? That you will be having usually with the help of namespaces. Your namespace and that namespace may be different usually. In order to make your namespace unique, you'll be using URLs because the URLs will be always unique. And not only that one, after you use the URL, like for example, your company website, like whatever the URL, you can add additional things to make your namespace unique, like IT, EMP. It doesn't mean this has to be available on the somewhere on the internet. You open and just try to, it is not going to have that value. That's fine. It's a string which is going to make unique. That's all. It's like, no, in case of when you're creating any accounts, you'll be using either your phone number or email ID as a username. Why? Because it's going to be unique. The same thing we're trying to achieve by using URLs as part of the value for the target namespace. Okay. Right. I can take the questions now. Any questions in what we discussed?
www.w3.org, which is the standard namespace, by default it has to be there. That also can be changed.
This cannot be changed. This has to be exactly same.
And the target namespace, the runtime it will generate based on the URL link or something like that. Correct? Some sequentially.
But you can also change. I mean, it is generating something. For example, let's see what it generated in this case. It's not even generated target namespace, right? You have to go and put target namespace here. Okay. Usually, in fact, most of the tools, what happens, it will also ask for the target namespace. I mean, these tools are like, when you are saying I want to generate, it will also ask what target namespace you want to assign. In fact, they may be available here. You can see here, occurrence options, type inference, indent character. No, it's not having that. Yeah. So if it's having, then it's going to take that value and generate it. Otherwise, you can come and assign your target namespace. If you're just creating and leaving like this, this will not be referred. This cannot be referred anywhere because you didn't assign target namespace. Okay. Any other questions?
Bhaskar, that encoding within that quotation, it is a database character set, right? UTF or whatever we're taking, UTF-8 or.
No, database is not coming into picture here. We'll talk about database later.
No, the encoding within bracket, this one, does it have any meaning for that UTF-8?
Yeah, it's basically telling probably your XML data will be like encoded using that format, something like that. I never really thought too much about it, but it's basically saying, yeah, your XML will be allowing the characters coming from this UTF-8 representation.
Okay.
Bhaskar, Sudhir here.
Yeah, Sudhir.
Do you have any sample file to show that the reference is having two references in the same file? Do you have any file that shows that? You just know that.
We will be actually referring some WSDLs later. So for example, if I open this WSDL, you can see XMLNS, XMLNS, XMLNS. I'll be talking about that in WSDL later.
Oh, okay.
Okay. The main purpose of XSD, actually, we are going to refer them in WSDL for us. And also in the integrations, but WSDLs will be having multiple references of XMLNS. You can see that. Mostly we'll be talking about that in the next session.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Anything confusing here? Or is everything confusing? Okay, it's not actually that complex. And again, as I said, don't worry too much about XSD. As long as you understand what I said, and when in future, when you open XML schema, you should not be lost. Oh, what is the meaning of? For example, if you didn't had this session today, you open any XML schema, otherwise everything will be new for you, right? Even though it is simple to understand, but unless you go and learn, how will you understand about that? Correct. So that is the reason we are making sure that you are familiar with that one. If you really are curious and if you are interested to learn in depth of XSD, you can just go to any tutorial, like W3 Schools tutorial is actually one good one, because we don't want to really spend too much time on XSD and all, correct? So XSD tutorial, for example, you can just go there and spend 1 hour, not more than that. 1 hour should be more than enough. If you go and read, it will be also telling what are the different other elements you can use. What is the empty element means? What is the mixed indicators? What is any XSD data types? Right? There meant multiple things are there. Only 3 sections you can see: XSD schema, complex type, and XSD data. You can probably go through quickly, run through this one and see if you're really interested to explore further. That will be more than sufficient for you guys. Okay. Right. So with that, in fact, if you don't have any questions, this XSD, this much only we want to understand within this context. And as I said, I'm going to use this XSDs in the WSDL, so you'll in fact get more clarity how other XML documents are using or referring XSDs. And when you are going to do the integrations also, you'll be using XSDs there. You'll be generating XSDs there. So you'll also get the context of like, how we are using in the integrations. Okay. And I want to confuse here. One thing that if you strictly speaking, just take this statement. You should have that knowledge. That's what I'm telling. Strictly speaking, there's only XML. Everything is XML. Even your XSD also an XML document. Do you see that? There's nothing like XML schema definition separately. That is also another XML. Fine. So XSD also represent using XML. Okay. So with that, let's continue. I'm going to share this notes also. Let me save. I will be saving this. I'll be saving in the same place where you have your recordings. Okay. The recordings, whatever I'm sharing, in the same place I'll be placing these notes also, so that every day whatever I'm typing here will be available for this. So XSD, we'll just write a few notes here. So XSD is helpful to represent or to define structure of a specific structure of XML documents. And XSD can refer other XSDs through namespaces. XSD can define its own namespace through target namespace field, and here we are going to use using XML-NS, right? Colon like that. And then, yeah, these are like, and you have something like unbounded, min occurrence, some special attributes, max occurrence. Okay, so min occurrence equal to 0 means it is not a mandatory or optional, I would say, element. Max occurrence equal to unbounded means repeated any number of times. Like that, some just for reference we'll keep here. Fine. So now let's talk a little bit about WSDL. I may not be completing that today, but I'll give introduction about WSDL and SOAP web service. So what is SOAP web service? There was no separate web service earlier, right? We were having only one web service called SOAP web service earlier. So SOAP web services, it is actually following some structure or some standards. Some of the standards are, it has to exchange the data. The payload has to be always XML. Not only that, payload has to be represented using SOAP packet. I will explain that. What is SOAP packet format? That is also, of course, XML. And every web service has to publish the definition using WSDL. So these are a couple of standards every web service has to follow. So when you are writing any operations or any web service, the web service is having some definition. Definition nothing but specifications. What is the operation name? What is the operation input? What is the operation output? How many operations are there in this web service? What are the types, etc. All those things you are going to you are going to expose or you are going to publish with the help of a document, WSDL. WSDL nothing but It is a document which has the details of your web service. It is not going to contain the actual implementation details of the web service. It's not going to show the logic of your operation, correct? The logic will be there somewhere in the server side. The WSDL document will at least provide the specification. Like your PLSQL package is having a specification and also you're having body. When you're going to give it to some other person, they need not come and open your body to understand. In order to call your package function or procedures, they have to only understand the specifications of your function or procedure. If they really want to understand the logic, then they need to open the body and understand. But usually that is not expected. They have to understand through some document, probably the logic. If they have to understand the logic, then the logic may be too complex. Like you don't want to really expose your logic to others, correct? So you are only exposing your specifications to others, and they can refer these functionality using those specifications, correct? So now, what is WSDL? So that is a document. Now the WSDL document, what do you think it is going to be? It is also going to be an XML document. Everything is XML in web services, in specifically SOAP web services. So SOAP web services, the WSDL is mandatory, and the WSDL is also an XML document. And it will also follow a specific XSD. It has to. Means you cannot create any WSDL XML document and say this is a WSDL. The WSDL has to follow a specific standard, specific structure. How can you define a specific structure for XML? Through XSD. That XSD is already defined. The web service specifications, like they are telling the standards. Every web service WSDL has to follow this standard. That is through some XSD. Okay. Now, just before I go into the depth of WSDL, let me just talk about REST here, because everybody might be thinking, what is a REST and SOAP? What is SOAP web service and what is REST web service? In case of REST services, first of all, why people thought about having another way of representing the web services? Anybody has idea about why people came up RESTful web services? We already had a SOAP web services. Or you heard about REST web service, RESTful APIs like that. We also call RESTful web services, REST APIs, all are one and the same. Anybody knows why we have two ways of defining web services?
So web services are generally very heavy, like it has a lot of data to carry, to process, and the rest is like one of the lightest web services we have right now.
Exactly. So why it is happening that way is, so exactly, RESTful web services are lighter compared to SOAP web services. The reason why SOAP is becoming complex, there are standards like this, right? It has to be always XML, the payload. So whenever you are converting any document or any data to XML, that itself is becoming heavy, right? For example, you take this XML. So I said, you can also represent like this. If I can send the document, the value like this, it is so lightweight, isn't it? Rather than representing like this. One good example, why your SOAP is becoming heavy. SOAP web service is telling your payload has to be in XML. The moment it becomes XML, your payload is becoming heavier. Okay, that's one reason. Not only that one, it says not only just XML, it has to be SOAP. What is again SOAP? There is something like SOAP envelope. When we are going to talk about, in fact, after doing integrations, I'll be showing that SOAP payload, etc. We'll be adding one more SOAP envelope. Then that is also going to have header, body. You're unnecessarily adding, not unnecessarily, I mean there is some reason of course, but you are just overloading your actual record. That is one reason why your SOAP web services become heavy. Not only that, it tried to make everything very, very generic. When we talk about SOAP web services, it says the protocol, the transport protocol can be anything. The transport protocol can be any protocol as long as client and server can communicate. For example, it could be FTP, it could be HTTP like that. In case of REST services, first thing is the protocol has to be HTTP only. There is no other option. And then no restriction of how you represent payload. How you represent or representing payload. That means it can be XML, it can be simple text, it can be CSV, it can be JSON, right? Come on, sorry. It can be CSV, it can be JSON, anything, as long as your client and server has an agreement saying that I'm going to send you a JSON. The server knows how to understand the document. Or the other way also, server knows I'm going to always send CSV to you. The client has to know how to interpret the data. Of course, we are going to lose the advantage what we had in XML. We said XML, we're having the data and these two things together so that it's always easy to interpret. That's fine. How many times you are going to read an XML or any record which you never know how to interpret? You're not every day writing that, right? You wrote the program once, your client and server. The moment you write the program saying that my client is always going to expect this way, and I know that this is a name, you hard code it, it's fine. When people are saying, I don't have the problem of hard coding my type, why do you want to unnecessarily overload my data always? So, and why people thought about that, actually, there was not a problem. So web services were never treated as a heavyweight. Even 15 years back when our resources were not so much ample, still people were happy with that. So web services. But what happened in last 5 years, etc., we had a lot of mobile applications, correct? The mobile applications, the mobile application which is running on the mobile is a very lightweight application, and your resources are very, very limited in case of mobile. That's where when the mobile application is going to call a REST API or any web service, it is going to get some data, and the data is becoming unnecessarily overloaded if you're using SOAP web services, which doesn't want. So you want to have a lightweight service which can give very lightweight data. That's where people thought about alternate, and then they said, let us go and use REST web services. The REST web services actually, they are very close to the actual HTTP, your web URLs. Let's say if I go to any browser and calling any URL, right? The way how you are using the URL here, the same thing you are using in REST services. Only thing is in case of browser, again, always you are going to get HTML as an output. In case of REST web services, your output can be, need not be in HTML. It will be usually, nowadays people follow JSON representation. I will show the JSON example in the next session, how that is different from XML, etc. So that's the difference between the SOAP and REST is, as we said, there are no too many standards here, except we are telling, in fact, there is one standard you have to say protocol has to be HTTP. That is also to minimize the complexity. The moment you make it more flexible, it becomes more complex, the technology, right? So that they made it very balanced. The data representation, there is no restriction, but the protocol has to be HTTP, so that you're making the whole technology easy to understand, easy to implement, and then lightweight. Okay. Any questions on that? So we are going to actually, yeah, right. Yeah. No, I'm just telling we are going to in fact create SOAP web services, create REST web services, invoke SOAP web services, and invoke REST web services with multiple examples. We'll get more clarity on that, what we're talking about. I'll also talk about what is JSON, all that, and we're going to learn the WSL a little more detail. We'll go open and WSL and etc. Understand the next session. Yeah, tell me.
Bhaskar, Sudhir here. Just one clarification: whether OIC also falls under this REST web services, or it is something different?
OIC deals both SOAP and REST.
Okay.
Okay. Usually Oracle SOA did not have much support for REST services, but in case of OIC, you have support for SOAP and REST, and they are matured there. Both are matured.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
So the content, the definition that is there inside WSDL is called as the payload. Am I right?
Yeah, basically the data what you're exchanging is the payload, yeah, between client and server. Making sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions here? I think I'll stop here for today. I don't want to load too much. So when you come back the next session, we'll talk a little more about WSDL, and we'll also go and start some integrations, etc. Yeah, tell me.
Jason, Bhaskar, do we need to install JDeveloper with the SOA or anything like that to do the session with you?
No need of JDeveloper. I'm going to actually give you integration OS instance details.
Okay.
And that is sufficient for now. You need to install a couple of things. You can do that later also. I mean, it's not immediately required. One is Oracle DB Database XE and SOAP UI. These two things you install in your system, and those two things also available. In fact, the whatever the recordings I'm sharing to you guys, so it will be something like, there is a folder called software.
Okay.
The resources, the software you can download from there. XE database and the SOAP UI. You can download this and keep them installed. So whenever we need them, you can use them. SOAP UI you'll be needing after next session. Oracle XE you'll be needing after 1 or 2 sessions. That's all. Nothing else to install in a database. There's one, in your system. We'll be installing one more thing later. That's called agent from the Oracle Integration Cloud. That we'll see how to do that. There is a steps available in the actual document. When you go to the activity document, like agent in OSC, how to download and how to install. I'll be also showing all the steps how to do that setup under. That is one thing. Otherwise, you're not installing anything else in your system. And one more thing I'll be giving to you guys is FTP server details. FTP cloud server. So because that also will be using to read and write the files over the FTP cloud, and these two are softwares you have to install. And later point of time, I'll be also giving Fusion instance. Not immediately you will need Fusion cloud instance. So when you go for the part 2, when we are talking about the Fusion technical, right, like in our course contents. So in the part 1, you don't need the Fusion applications. So when you go to part 2, Fusion technical, you will be needing Fusion applications. In the part 3 also, we are going to develop the live integrations with the help of Fusion applications. So there also you will be of course working with Fusion applications. You'll be having the access for 4 months on that. You can continue using that Fusion application. So even if you want to learn something from the functional side, you can in fact use it. Fusion applications is having everything. Okay. Yeah. Any other clarifications?
So Oracle Database XE is which version of this?
11G. 11G I'm having. You can install that. If you're having later version, it's fine. Just you can keep it.
Okay. So one more question, like no restriction of representing payload. So this REST service can provide not only a JSON output, it can also provide the CSV, text, XML also.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's actually it's a very nice way of representing services unnecessarily. SOAP has its own advantages, like I think the security, you can implement its own security in case of SOAP. Usually in case of REST services, you are going to depend on the HTTP kind of security. There are technically there are some differences like that, but usually for our integrations, that's not a big deal.
But my doubt is, Bhaskar, when REST service can do everything, even what the SOAP can do, then why is still they are having SOAP?
That's what, because it's already there in the market for so many years, right? You cannot go and modify all the web services to REST now. For example, Fusion applications, when they released the first version, there was no concept of REST. So they exposed everything in SOAP web services. Now you have to call those web services so that you have to understand SOAP web service also. So even what Oracle is doing now, the new services, what they're exposing, they're primarily focusing on exposing in the REST web services. That's one reason. The second reason is People might think like, some places they still want to use SOAP web service because of, like, as I said, security advantages and those kind of things.
Okay.
But over a period of time, I think yes, this will dominate over the SOAP web services. Already it is dominating now. Yes,
Already-
so the usage of
already-
SOAP web services only come down over a period of time. Yeah.
I think already in VBCS they are nowhere accepting SOAP, right? Most of the
That's
spaces
true.
they-
Now the microservices concept, actually, the microservices concept, everything is REST web service. So your UI will be always accessing your backend with the help of REST APIs. It doesn't understand about database or, like, your Java or your .NET. I don't care. I have a UI. Give me REST API. I'm going to just call it. And how you implement the REST API, it's up to you. You implement using Java, using .NET. Within the database itself, you're having ORDS service. You expose that. It's fine. That is the latest, like, the approach we follow in the application development.
So we
The
can define
VBCS actually follows that kind of architecture.
when generating this payload for the REST API, we can just define whether the output of this payload should be XML or the output of this REST
Right.
services should be CSV or not. We can define that, right?
Yes, yeah.
But will you be showing that how we can differentiate XML CSV for while generating the REST services?
Yeah, we'll be doing many examples actually
Okay.
on SOAP and REST. This is just like to understand again very basics before we get into the actual. See, whatever I talked today, not specific to integration cloud.
Okay.
This is some knowledge you are just getting about these technologies, and we'll be referring them directly or indirectly in the integrations. Okay. Any other questions?
Bhaskar, this is Jagannath.
Yeah, Jagannath, tell me.
Yeah, yesterday you have explained related to FBDI, that integration. So in the live in the system, it is kind of Fusion application. You saw how the daily rate is changed by using that, taking the file to the folder FTP and calling the API, and directly GL daily rate data is
Yeah.
updated or modified. So
Yeah.
in real life system, so we are going to do the integration in the sandbox system. So how we are migrating that one to the production? Is there any definite file we need to migrate, or what is the deployment approach? Once we are doing the development, what is the deployment approach to the live system?
Deployment of our integrations, you mean?
Right.
There is no concept of deployment in the integrations. You are going to just activate, that's all. So they will be,
So-
see, you will be having like this OS instance I'm giving, right?
Right.
So usually what happens in the real time, you may be having a dev instance and UAT instance and the production instance. 3 instances will be having. So you develop the integrations using development instance, you test it everything. QA will be testing on UAT. Then you are going to move them to production instance. So there is a way to export and import the integrations. Whatever you do here in the instance, you can export them and import into the other instances.
Okay.
It's like your database only. Your database, if you're writing a PLSQL or any database objects, what you do? You're writing on one database dev instance, correct?
Right. Right.
You're exporting to another instance. Same thing we follow in case of OS. Whereas, if you go to Oracle SOA and all, those concepts are different. There we always say deployment because you're having deployment. So they try to make it simple in the case of OS. Internally, it is using same concept, deployment and all. But from a developer point of view, you don't need to get into all those internals of how this application is getting deployed, what server is being used internally. You don't even know whether WebLogic server is there or what server is there. I mean,
Okay,
at the
okay.
documentation side. I know it's a SOA server behind the scene, but like nobody talks about that. No documentation also talks about that. It's all taken care.
So client, those are using Fusion application, is the OIC, is the free for them, or is the separate license they have to buy?
It's separate license. It's a
Okay.
pass license, yeah, separate.
Okay.
So pass license. So pass we have to buy. Under pass we have
License
so
means
many.
subscription.
Yeah.
See,
No,
these are
I
all
mean-
subscription based, right? Cloud subscriptions.
No, Bhaskar, actually one thing I need to clarify. Like license means they have to client has to buy a license for PaaS, right? Under PaaS license, they will have so many subscriptions, correct?
Yes, yes. License means usually what happens when you're buying on premises, you call them licenses. When you're buying on the cloud, you call them subscriptions. That's what I mean, my understanding. License means you're paying like no one-time fees, right? I buy this product, like no R12 version of e-business suite. I pay like no whatever X dollars, I will use it. Subscription means usually what I'm saying, I'm taking the OIC cloud instance, subscription based on my usage, you charge me monthly or yearly or 6 months like that.
So even PaaS also I take a subscription, but in that PaaS we have so many things like OAC or so
No,
many things.
pass is just like referring like very high level we talked about here, right? The pass means you may say I want a JCS pass subscription, I want like SOVA CS subscription, or I want OAC subscription like that. You will not say I want just pass subscription. It's like just high level representation of which bucket it falls into. This is all again logical representations. Okay, there is nothing like technically you will say this is pass and this is SaaS, right? It's up to you how you want. I mean, I'm just trying to make it again very generic. This is a logical representation only, IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. Actually, what you're taking is some service on the cloud and you're using it. It could be Fusion applications also a service. JC is also a service, Java Cloud service. Integration Cloud also a service. And a Unix server also a service for you. But you're categorizing them saying, if I'm taking only like host with operating system, they call it as a infrastructure. If I'm taking like middleware or like SOVA CS or database, then I'm calling it a PaaS. And then use the Fusion applications, which is like SaaS. It's like, you understand the logically why they made it, right? I didn't explain too much about that. It's like when you want to develop something also, what you do, you're developing like, for example, I'm buying a laptop. First thing what you get, you're going to get a host and then a Windows operating system or Linux, something like that. Then what I do, I install my, for example, web server or database server based on my need. Then I'm developing one Java application or web application like that, or a DB application. And then what I do, I put them on the server. Then this application, I'm going to give it to my employees through some URL. Ultimately, what you want to develop some application and give it to like your vendors, your employees, your clients, or whatever, so that they can access your functionality. There can be some applications which are like more of automation side. Those are not business application. That's fine. But you see, there are 3 layers. This is IaaS on the cloud. This is your PaaS. It means you are not installing. When you are taking the PaaS service provider is going to install the server for you. They are going to maintain for you. Then, no, I don't want to even develop my application. Let me buy directly from the cloud. That is your SaaS. So that here, what is directly you are getting URL, which your employees can use or whichever. In this case, you only take the PaaS, you develop your applications. That's what we are doing, right? When you are taking the integration in cloud, you're not getting the integrations automatically. You are developing the integrations. And those integrations will be exposing to other people who will be able to call them through like some UI, or they may be automating some things. Making sense, right? So it's all again logically how you represent these buckets. In fact, if you go to Microsoft, in the Microsoft, I think even some of the PaaS, what looks like PaaS, they call them SaaS. I mean, they felt like, no, this is more of application. I want to call them SaaS. It's fine. I mean, it doesn't matter for me. It's a service for me at the end as a client. Okay.
So when they purchase it, actually, when they go, if I go to the Oracle and say, man, I want Fusion. Okay, so do they provide IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, everything?
Why will they provide? No, they will only provide this one. You don't, that's the whole purpose of buying this one. You don't need to deal with all these things. Oracle will say, you just take this one. I will manage internally your WebLogic server, your applications, your Java code, your ADF code. It is my headache. You don't worry. You just take the URL and use it.
Okay. So now I will go, okay, no man, I don't want only SaaS. Now I need PaaS. Then how they will provide?
Another subscription.
So another subscription, I will say PaaS. but I may decide tomorrow I will take OIC, JDBC,
Okay, let me ask one question. If you're going to buy operating system from somebody, will you go and say I want to buy OS, or you will say I want to buy Windows OS? Generally, I'm asking. What will you say? Will you buy Windows OS or OS?
laptop. Laptop. I will say okay. I need a laptop.
No, after that, you will say Windows OS, or you want to say I want to take some OS. You will specifically mention like
Windows.
what OS you want, correct?
Okay, right.
The same thing you will say when you're buying PaaS also. You will say I want to buy a PaaS, which is database cloud service or Java cloud service or OSCS. This is a more generic representation of that category. That's all. Got it?
Okay.
Too many terminologies. Okay, just try to make the thing simple. Whatever you know, try to connect to that one. Then your this understanding becomes simple. Nothing is new in the cloud. All we're trying to represent in different manner and using different terminologies. And the concept also not very new. I mean, there are some tools and frameworks are new in the cloud, but that is only for the cloud organization point of view. How they make sure like your cloud environment is taken care, automated, because they're going to work with so many different servers and applications now. But for the client, it's just like for me at the end, it's like just application I'm using. Fusion applications is like web application for me, nothing more than that as an end user. Okay, fine. I think that's good. I mean, some things should be clear. Don't get just like confused about too many jargons and terminologies. Try to make it simple, then your life becomes simple. Okay, and try to relate with what you've done and why it is a different, I mean, and what is a different way of doing now. We are doing the same things a different way, manner now. You have to be clear on that. All right. Any other questions?
So you will be sharing all the documents now.
Yes,
now?
yes. Yeah. I'll be sharing all the recordings, all the documents. In fact, I already shared to some of the people. I'll be sharing to rest all of you also. All right, that's all for today. We're going to have the session again on Friday, same time, and the day after tomorrow, same time. And this week we don't have the session on Saturday. From next week onwards, we are going to have the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. Yesterday also I mentioned about this. Monday and Wednesday. In fact, I have a request saying instead of 7:30, they're saying 7 a.m. I hope that's okay for everyone. If not too early. That is from next week. This week, Friday, we're going to still have 7:30. This week, 7:30 only, same time. Next week, we're trying to make it 7 a.m. IST. And Saturday, it is going to be 5:30 p.m. IST. But this Saturday, there is no session. Okay? Any questions on this schedule? All right, guys. That's all for today. Thank you. Thanks for your patience.
Thanks.
And by the way, I'm sorry, just one quick thing. So in the activity guide, there is a small activity for your XSD. You complete that one. XSD based on the sample XML. So under resources, activity resources folder, attendees resource folder, there is an activity guide. You open that and go through this activity so that you get some understanding of XSD. And on top of that, you spend like 1 hour on the net if you want understanding about XSD, SOAP web service, test web service. It's up to you what all you want to explore before the next session. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhaskar.
Thank you. Thank you, Oscar.
Bye.
Thank you, Bhaskar.
Thank you, Oscar.